And just so you know, Tim, as people are starting to file in, we have a couple hundred people that had registered. So
Awesome.
we have a full house today. So we'll see how that goes. But
Wonderful.
yeah. So what we'll do is just have everyone who's in attendance answer that first poll question so we can just get a sense of where everybody's from. So far, I see, oh, we've got some people from coast to coast already, as well as from the USA. Lots from Ontario.
That is the nice part with webinars now too, is like, I miss seeing people in person, but you have a further reach with technology this way too, right?
Yeah, you know what, it's really advantageous. I know living in a few hours away from Toronto, where a lot of training courses are held in Toronto, sometimes that was prohibitive for me to be able to attend things, whereas with the online, it certainly, it gives everyone an opportunity to attend regardless of their location. So.
It really does.
Yeah, well, looks like we've got, yeah, so basically it looks like we've got representation from many of the provinces here right across the country and some from the United States. I'm going to end that particular poll. I'll just share those results. And you can see that mainly from Ontario, but from all over here. Now I'm just going to launch one more poll here, and we want to know what your occupation is. So let us know what your occupation is, what sort of industry that you work in, and that'll give us a sense, and then we'll get going. That's good. We've got a lot of builder developers. Looks like that's the biggest category so far. We've got manufacturers and suppliers and utilities and services. We have some trades, energy advisors, engineers and architects, and government representation, and some academia. Nice. So it looks like almost everybody. So I see that we don't have any renovators in the crowd. I'm gonna have to work on that one. I'll work on that group. All right, so I'll just end that poll and I'll share those results. So it looks like the majority of the people, Tim, here are builder developers.
Oh, perfect. Always nice to know the audience.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of helps so you know who you're talking to. Okay, so thank you everybody for participating in those poll questions. My name is Stephanie Coleman and I work with Building Knowledge. Welcome to the first webinar of 2021 in the Enbridge sponsored Advanced Building Science webinar series. Oh, somebody just said that they are from real estate. Oh, I didn't have that. Thank you for letting me know that. Okay, so we've got real estate agents as well. So thank you so much for joining us. This session will be recorded. And so anybody who's registered, so all of you that are on the call, will be receiving an email from me afterwards with a link to the recording as well as the presentation in a PDF format that Tim is presenting to us. So today, Tim is the Chief Strategy Officer of Avid Ratings Canada, and he's going to be presenting to us the 2020 new home buyer preference study results, which I'm super excited, Tim. These presentations are always super interesting, super exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm just going to go through some Zoom housekeeping, and then I will hand things off to Susan Cudahy from Enbridge. So you will notice at the bottom, there is a chat function and a Q&A function. So we would ask that if you have questions for Tim, put them in the Q&A function at the bottom, because that handles questions and answers the most effectively. And so what I'll do is throughout the presentation, I will turn my camera on and Tim will know that we have some questions and he'll answer them throughout the presentation. So use the Q&A for any questions you have of Tim. For the chat, feel free to just make general comments that you have in there, or if you're having any sort of technical issues, just let me know in the chat. If for some reason we lose connectivity or something like that happens, power outage or something, you can send me an email. I'll be monitoring my emails as well. So now I will hand things over to our sponsor, Susan Cudahy from Enbridge, to say a few words.
Thanks, Steph. So I guess on behalf of Enbridge Gas, I want to welcome everybody who's participating today. I know that Tim's content and and focus on what your buyers of today and tomorrow are looking for is always key information on how to represent your product and your brand going forward. So taking the time to understand what your audience wants in a home may never be more important than during the times we find ourselves in today. Because as the idea of home has evolved to become a place of work, to school, and to shelter, to keep our families healthy, the changing needs and the wants of our new buyers are going to reflect this new reality. The importance of capturing those wants and needs through Avid ratings types of surveys have never been more critical. We know as well that all of us are facing the challenges of the renewed state of emergency. And along with the politics south of the border can be a real time of anxiety and unsettled times. So just remember to take the time to reach out to each other if you think someone may be struggling at a time like this, and also to protect your own mental health. So important for all of us. So again, on behalf of all of our team at Enbridge, we want to say stay well, stay safe, and stay home. And as Canadians, if we can't stay home, stay one hockey stick apart. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Steph.
Thank you so much, Susan, for those great and timely words. And these types of webinars aren't possible without sponsors and support from Enbridge. And Enbridge is such a great support to our industry and to the builders and developers and renovators. So thank you, Susan. So now I am pleased to introduce Tim. Tim and I have known each other for many, many years. And so Tim is the Chief Strategy Officer for Avid Ratings. He has spent most of his career in the construction industry, starting at 16 years old by working summers as a site laborer. That's starting from the ground up. That is excellent life experience for sure. He earned his Bachelor's of Science degree from Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario, and has worked as a carpenter, a project manager, new home salesperson, and also vice president for an Ontario-based home builder. So as Chief Strategy Officer of Avid Ratings Canada, Tim helps home builders leverage research, data, and analytics to create customer experience excellence. So thank you, Tim, for joining us today, and I look forward to your presentation. It's over to you now.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Stephanie. And thanks, Susan, as well, for teeing this up for us. I'm excited. I hope everyone, I made a coffee, because at this point, we're going to get into some data. So you need a coffee before you get into data, I find. And also, before I jump into a little background, so I work with Avid Ratings. I work on the Canadian side of Avid Ratings. So we're a customer experience and market research company. The cool thing about Avid is we've only worked in the building industry. We've been in business since 1992, but we've always kept our focus on the building industry. Working in USA, Canada, and now we recently expanded into Australia about a year ago as well, but never left our roots, which truly, my roots go back, as Steph mentioned. I was actually 15 years old when I started construction, but I think that might not have been appropriate. So we put 16 years old on my bio, but I go back a long time. I'm really passionate about this great industry that we all work in. So let's get started here. We're going to, for today's webinar, we're going to take a look at findings on Canadian homebuyer preferences. And the data I'm going to look at is from the 2020 CHBA Homebuyer Preference Study, powered by Avid Ratings Canada. It's a partnership research study that we've done for several years. So at this point, let's start digging into some of the background on that study, and then we're going to get into some data and finish it off with actually some customer satisfaction data to shake it up a little bit today. So some background on this study. Avid and CHBA partnered on this national study back in 2014. We actually signed a deal back at the national conference in Whistler, CHBA's national conference out in Whistler, British Columbia, back in the days when we could all travel. And it is now the largest study of its kind in Canada. So the most recent study was conducted last year, 2020. That was the 6th year of this research project. It was the largest sample size to date for the study. So it gave us over 130,000 surveys that we've now sent out to new homeowners over the past 6 years. And again, these are new homeowners. These are people who have taken possession of a brand new home. You know, when we deploy the surveys, they've been in their new home for up to 2 years, so 1 to 2 years. Last year, we got about just over 2,600 homeowners that responded. And that gave us now about 15,000 responses in our database since the first year. And again, why I think this is so awesome is this is a deep study. This is a deep survey instrument we send out. It's about 190 questions long, which means if you do the math, we have about 2.9 million data points now that we've accumulated on Canadian folks that have bought new homes since 2015 or 2014. And then you can analyze that data and cross-analyze that data by age group, by home type, by location, by buyer type, and more. So income level. So you can see how you can really get this massive opening funnel of data. I'm trying to rein some of that in today so we can really focus on some good high-level usable facts. Now, before I get into the data, I do want to sort of caveat some of this data by saying the most recent survey, there's always this time lag with research. By the time you send surveys out, leave them fielded for a while, get the data back in, it takes some time. So the most recent surveys were actually fielded and the data was compiled and accumulated back prior to COVID. So who would have thought, like when we were actually starting to tabulate the results, COVID was all around us. We released the results and did a first webinar back in August of last year. And so from the time we closed off the survey collector to the time we're actually presenting the results, the world had been dramatically changed for all of us. So, and the pandemic itself has really caused a shift in thinking. We always hear that cliche thing of home is where the heart is, but man, home has now become where the everything is. It's now, as Susan mentioned, it's remote offices, it's where we live, it's remote learning centers for home, schooling our kids and for music lessons and dance lessons. Last summer, micro farming took off. People were planting more gardens. The home has become a hub for recreation and health. Home gyms. At the beginning of COVID, I think our kitchen was a home bakery. Bread baking, all that, dining in, because restaurants, we couldn't get out to restaurants a lot, and we're back to that again. Home theaters. So home buyer preferences will no doubt continue to be impacted by this pandemic. And I think the crux of it is data-driven decisions will be more important than ever in this building industry. They're already critical. This is a high stakes industry, but they're going to get even more critical looking forward. So this research study, as I mentioned, it really digs deep. Again, about 190 question survey we send out. I'm always thrilled that thousands of people take the time, but it also proves to me that Canadian homeowners are pretty passionate about providing feedback on this industry, which is awesome. Today's home, this is digging deep into who are these home buyers? How are they shopping for their new homes? What are they looking for when they're considering going back in the market for their next home? And then we have a big section on home features and design preferences. So, design and layout elements, the products and materials that they prefer in their homes. And then we also have a section on community amenities and proximity preferences as well. So, what do they want the communities to look like where they call home? What do they want them to be near? So we're going to touch on all of these kind of items high level today. And I should say too, if you have questions, fire them in. Steph's going to jump on screen for me as well. And we can field questions on the fly here as well. So we'll take some breaks for questions on the way through like that or as they come up. And we're going to sprinkle in a couple more polling questions as well to keep everybody engaged. So before we get into some of the CHBA data, I kind of wanted to frame, the Canadian population. Who are we? What age brackets are we in? This is from the 2016 Canadian census. And so the age ranges, when we look at demographic cohorts, they tend to be different depending on what study you read. We tried to align pretty close to the census data. So for the CHBA study, we look at Gen Z as being less than 28 years old. So born after 1992. Now, having said that, there's actually a Gen Alpha. I think they're calling it Gen Alpha right now. Whether that sticks forever, we're not sure. But they're going to be carving off a Gen Alpha from Gen Z. So that always happens with cohorts. Gen Alpha is going to be folks with birth years that started in 2010 and after. So, but right now we're going to kind of, for the CHBA purposes, we're looking at Gen Z as kind of under 28 years old. We look at millennials as being about 28 to 39 years old last year. Gen Xers, my generation, is in the 40 to 54-year-old bucket as of last year. Our boomer, the big generation we've all targeted for years, 55 to 74 years old as of 2020. And then the pre-boomers are over 74 years old as of last year. So again, all those ages advance forward now that we tipped the calendar into 2021. But when you think about it, the leading edge of millennials turned 39 years old last year. a lot of times when I hear the word millennials and you hear articles about millennials, you think of, possibly, young people playing video games in their parents' basement. But the leading edge is 39 years old. The trailing edge of millennials is now 29, turning 29 years old. It's going to be 30 this year. So if you combine the leading edge of that Gen Z, which we talked about, they're reaching 28 years old right now, combine that with this millennial cohort, and there is a group right now that's larger than the boomers. And that group is heading into prime home heading into prime home ownership age and family formation ages. But then at the other end of the spectrum for our industry, we have to look at as well is look at the boomer market. The youngest boomer turned 55 last year. The whole Freedom 55 thing. So the youngest boomers now turned 55 last year. So it's interesting, we start looking at the data, what some of this means. Now, again, as I mentioned, when we talk about that family formation, household formation, millennials are 28 to 39 years old. So what we're seeing on the graph here is, if you look at how many are married or common law in Canada, again, this is probably back to the census data from 2016. So fresher data would be nice when the government starts releasing it. But a high percent are married or common law and partnering off. So that means that this age group is, what's considered the typical life stage for prime household formation, prime family formation. Now, having said that, I think a lot of us are aware that, family formation, household formation for the millennials, and again, that 28 to 39-year-old group that we're still focusing on here so far, it's occurring or has occurred later than previous generations. So, that this is a group that for some degree kind of graduated from university or from post-secondary, even secondary school in this great recession that was happening more so in the US, but also impacted Canada. So some stayed in school longer, some put off home purchases, things like that. Definitely some put off family formation. So when we look at this graph here on screen, this is fertility rates from 2000 to 2017. The fertility rates of Canadian women have undergone a pretty dramatic shift since the turn of the century. Dropping, when you look at it's dropping among women under 30 and rising for those in the higher age brackets, according to StatsCan. So if we look at the fertility rate for women 35 to 39, it typically rose by more than 60% in most jurisdictions across Canada. So on this graph, I tried to outline green circles around which age brackets have been increasing when it comes to family formation or fertility rates, and then which have been declining. But it's relatively low rates of fertility for women aged 20 to 29, especially when you look at provinces like in Ontario and British Columbia, where we tend to have somewhat higher housing costs. It might have even point to this connection, I'm speculating, but between public policy and family formation decisions, right? Which can have a big impact on our industry, on housing demand, on preferences. If I'm going to push off having a family, I don't need to maybe buy a home, or I don't need to buy that next home. So again, all these moving parts on the housing continuum that we want to take a look at. And then at the other end of the age continuum, as I mentioned, the youngest baby boomer turns 55 years old. They turned 55 years old last year. So, they're going to be 56 at some point this year. So baby boomers are in that sort of 55 to 74-year-old bracket. And then you still have a cohort of pre-boomers. And again, people are living longer, staying active longer. Pre-boomers are over 74 years old, but I know a lot of healthy, active pre-boomers right now that are still active in the housing market as well, in so many fronts. So what we're looking at on screen here too is share of wealth, because to be in this industry, to be in this market, to make housing decisions, there's got to be some form of wealth, either being built or being dispersed. So boomers are shown here on this top graph, the red line, as holding the highest share of wealth of the generations in Canada. But as you can see, it is drifting downwards slightly. But where we're seeing that increase is Generation X. So as the boomers disperse some of that wealth, Generation X and the millennial cohort is picking up some of that wealth. So it's always interesting to see how that factors into the economics of the housing market as well. More than 5 million Canadians are set to turn 65 this decade. Almost all boomers, except for that last year of them, will turn 65 or older and actually become senior citizens in this decade. So it's pretty interesting. Again, back to that Freedom 55 thing we thought of, the semi-retirement and the retirement decisions often have a big impact on home ownership decisions as well, right? I'm retiring, do I want to downsize? I'm semi-retiring, maybe I'll move into active adult lifestyle community, or maybe I want a condo lifestyle for simplifying my life, things like that. So again, age definitely drives the market in some respects as well. So now I'm going to jump into some of what we see in the CH. That was a lot of StatsCan backgrounder data. What we see in some of the CHBA data, I wanted to dig into some of that now as well to see if it aligns. And so for starters, what we're looking at here is the demographic cohorts that are buying new homes. So from the CHBA study, who's buying new homes across the country? The millennial group became the largest piece of the pie in 2019. So they bumped out Gen X back then. And they continue to hold that spot in their most recent study. Their piece of the pie shrunk marginally, about 1.6% from last year. But again, millennials have now bumped out my generation as being the largest cohort of folks that have been buying new homes over the past 2 years of the study. Gen X, again, my generation, has actually decreased from about 45% since the first year of the study back in 2015, down about 12%. So that piece of the pie has shrunk by about 12%. An area which, again, I'm not surprised with, boomers have actually increased by about 14%. So, they're increasing, or increased from 13.7%, sorry, 14% when we started the study. They've increased their piece of the pie by almost 10% over the 6 years of the study. So definitely more activity in the boomer age group, or the boomer cohort, when it comes to the new housing market across the country. And then what's interesting as well, it's a small piece of the pie in orange on the screen, but Gen Z is showing up as 5.8%. And again, these folks are turning 29 years old at some point this year. But when we first launched this study, they wasn't even on the radar. So it's always kind of cool as this becomes a bit of a data movie and not just a snapshot, to watch it year to year and trends change and these cohorts change. So Gen Z is now making up about 4.7% last year. Now they're up to 5.8% this year. And again, year one, they were not even on the grid. It wasn't even showing up. So, and again, that's a big cohort coming in behind the millennials as well. Now, looking at the life stages of today's new home buyers as well. And again, what I'm seeing here reinforces some of those StatsCan slides we looked at. So seen in that previous data from StatsCan, millennials are in what would be typically considered their typical household and family formation stages of life based on their ages. And this does actually align with what we're seeing in the CHBA study data, which is showing about a 4%, 3.7% increase in home buyers that describe themselves as a growing family with kids. Then we also have the single or the couple segment of the market. That's actually shrunk a bit though. It's shrunk by almost, well, not a bit, almost 10% since the first year of the study. And then baby boomers that we've been talking about, they're in that typical semi-retirement to retirement stage of life. They've actually increased activity in that buyer profile. That little section of the pie is up 8.8%, so 9% over the past 6 years since 2015. So that definitely is more activity going on in that segment of the market. It's interesting, it seems like both ends of the market, that would align with typical millennial family formation and typical baby boomer semi-retirement or retirement home buying decisions, are creating this extra activity in the housing market right now. Now, this is an area where you definitely want to drill into the data at more granular levels. But I just want to put a snapshot. We do collect information on, combined household income of today's home buyers. So that's what I've got on screen right now. And this is, again, nationwide snapshot here. And you want to get very micro with this by province and even by metro area or market area in every province. But, just reading into this kind of high level data right now, the majority of home buyers that are active in the new home market have actually an annual combined household income of over $100,000. The 150,000 and up income level has actually been increasing in activity over the past 6 years. It works out some, just getting deeper into the stats, about 80% of the homeowners have an annual income of between, income of 75,000 and up. So I kept kind of dropping the bar as I was cutting the data. Or I guess conversely, the way you can look at it is about 1 in 5 home buyers have an income under combined annual household income under $75,000. What that makes me always question, which I think as an industry we often question as well, is home ownership becoming less attainable? Are home prices now outpacing income gains? All these questions. Again, that's a whole webinar we could talk about it. And I'll leave that to the economists as well. But saving for a down payment now takes about 13 years versus 5 years back in the 70s. So there are some definite considerations as we look towards any headwinds as an industry that we might be facing. Now, looking at it, just again, this is another slide where I love drilling in deeper into the data. I didn't know where attendees would be joining the webinar from, so I kept it at kind of a national level fabric here for the data. But you can, in the system, in the data, you can drill down and look at, again, this stuff by metro area, by province. But now looking at the price of homes being purchased, kind of as a national snapshot, nearly 3/4 of the home buyers are purchasing houses priced between $300,000 and $750,000. The largest subsegment of that group is in that $500,000 to $750,000 range. Now, just before this webinar a couple of days ago, I wanted to see if I get some Ontario information that's more recent. So according to CREA, Canadian Real Estate Association, the average Ontario home price was forecast to finish in 2020 at $708,000, well, $708,377. And that's actually up 17% from 2019's average home price of about $605,000. For 2021, CREA is predicted that the Ontario home prices are expected to climb again by another 16.3% and finish the end of this year, their projections to finish at about $824,000. So looking at the inset bar graph here, the average home price in some cities struggles to even have product between $300,000 and $750,000. Like I'm thinking markets like Toronto, Vancouver. Even when you get into Victoria and Fraser Valley out west, there's pressure on markets like Hamilton, Burlington, and even out to where I live in Waterloo region. So, there's very few markets in Canada that we have an average house price under $300,000 anymore. So, yeah, and interesting to look at what people are paying, where the market's heading. And there's a pretty big section of this survey study is marketing related. So again, how are people shopping for their new homes? What is the first resource they use when they decide to go shopping for a new home? This one's going to be interesting to see where it goes post-COVID or during COVID. But what I'm showing here is, how are home buyers shopping for homes today? The black text, so anything in black text I consider to be sort of a physical discovery resource. So jumping in your car and driving out to look if that's the right community, making an appointment at a sales office, things like that. It's definitely a change because of COVID. And then anything in orange text is what I would consider to be a digital or digital discovery resource, a digital tool of some sort. So we asked one question on the survey, which I think is interesting right at the start, is like, what's your first resource you use to find a builder? So, and what we see in the results for that, which I don't have on screen, this is kind of a side note, it's an interesting split. About 40% of home buyers say that their first resource is something physical. They want to, again, visit a model home, visit a sales center, go drive a community, get a feel for it. And then there's about 30% of home buyers that responded they start online. Internet search, jump on a builder's website, whatever it might be. I expect pretty dramatic changes in this data, as we look forward into the future studies. This COVID environment has driven so many consumers online. StatsCan said online shopping had doubled since the pandemic, surged by 99%. I think that was back in the fall. So there were so many digital tools for home shopping and for home buying that have been nice to have offerings for builders and nice to use tools for buyers that have become such a need to have resource now in this kind of COVID survival kit for builder sales or new home sales. I've, again, been in the industry most of my life, far too many years sometimes. But to me, it felt like digital tools for home shopping and home buying accelerated by 3 years in the course of 3 months last March. March to April to May, when COVID took hold, man, I know peers and other companies in the industries and partner companies, and they just got like, their phones were ringing, their email inboxes were filling up with requests. How do we get digital renderings? How do we get virtual tours? How do we get augmented reality? So our industry really did embrace digital tools, but also, we had to, but we got pulled ahead 3 years in the course of 3 months, it felt. So at this point, we wanted to, kind of break up. It's a lot of data today, so I want to break this up with some polling questions. So Stephanie's going to help us launch a poll on screen, and this one's a really simple yes, no. But has your company invested in more digital tools for your sales and marketing efforts as a result of this pandemic? So we'll leave this up on screen for a bit, but just share some results here after. But what are we finding? Is people doubling down on digital tools? Are we needing to? Is it critical for survival? So Steph is the guru for the Zoom meetings here, so I will let her leave the poll open as long as she sees fit. But just curious to see if people are gone more digital, as the people on the webinar today have gone more digital.
Okay, it looks like the most of the people have answered, so I will go ahead and share those results.
So we've got 77% that have gone more digital. I can't say that I'm surprised. It's kind of a 3/4, 1/4 split right now. And again, it depends if the attendees, which part of the industry they're from. But that's what we're seeing across North America, again, from our client base and our industry peers and partner companies, is the shift to digital has really, really taken hold.
So I've taken that down. You might need to close the box on your screen.
There we go. We're not quite a year into this, and we're almost all becoming Zoom pros. So now I wanted to get into some profile information on buyers. Again, who is buying the homes? What are they looking for? That type of stuff. So we're going to dig into some of the profile stuff now. Now, again, this study is what we rely on for this survey study is builders across Canada, CHBA member builders across Canada to participate, encourage their homeowners to fill out the survey. So we're looking at existing homeowners. They bought a new home in the past couple of years. That's who the surveys go out to. So we don't have data on, first-time home buyers. That would be a whole different study. We'd have to find prospects from the industry. So this is looking at existing home buyers and next moves, essentially. So what we're seeing here when we look at profiles is, this first move-up buyer idea. So this is, again, somebody purchasing their second home. They're in a house, they're going to purchase their second home. That segment has actually shrunk by 4.7%, so about 5% since the first year of the study. Then we have a group that we call the second to move up or more. So these are folks that are, in their second home already, and now they're going to look to purchase a third home or move up to their fourth home. And that segment as well is down by almost 11%, down by 10.6% since year one. And we noticed this in last year's study as well, last year's data, that these earlier stages of the market have been kind of shrinking in size a little bit. Your first move up or your second or more move up buyer has been shrinking in size a little bit. Thankfully, this retirement segment has been more active. So, that segment's actually up about 3.6%. And we've also noticed that the investment segment's up about 7% as well, those buying a property for investment. One I am keeping an eye on, we're working with CHBA to gear up the next year of the study now. As of yesterday, we're starting to get the wheels in motion. But I'm interested to watch those folks that are saying they're seeking a vacation or a second home. I think that segment's going to be interesting because the cottage and the vacation home market has been much more active in most of Canada since COVID. Again, we're doing a lot more. We can't travel, so we're doing more staycationing. So there's, I know the activity in a lot of cottage and recreational markets has definitely been more intense since COVID. So we're going to be curious to see where that goes in future data. And we also want to take a look at the home type preference. So what are they going to look for the type of home? And this is what we're seeing for data. Data showing increasing demand for single family home, and we've seen this from the start of the study. Single family detached product in Canada. It's at 69.8% that are seeking a single family detached home as of last year's study. And that's increased from about 56% since the first year of the study. So again, that's always interesting to me, because are we planning, is our drive towards density and drive towards intensification congruent with what consumers are saying they're going to be looking for? We're also seeing a trend towards larger homes, seeing a larger segment of people seeking 4-bedroom plus homes. But that does align possibly with the data we saw earlier showing increased activity in that group or that segment that considers themselves the growing family with kids segment. So a growing family with kids, you might want to have a bigger home, 4 bedrooms, 4+ bedrooms. Over about a third of the home buyers in the most recent study, when we look at the size of the home they're looking for, are looking for something in that 1,800 to 2,400 square foot range. The subsegment in there is mostly in that 18 to 2,100 square foot range. So the sweet spot seems to be about a third of the buyers looking for something 18 to 24, but mainly into 18 to 2,100 square feet. And then we have about a third that are actually looking a bit smaller. So another third of the respondents said they're going to be looking for something between 12 and 1,800 square feet. I think this is, again, an area, part of this webinar today, I guess I'm prognosticating or speculating, but I think it's an area that's going to be interesting to see how this pandemic environment is going to impact the future demand for product type and square footage. So when we look at the needs for having more home office space, for having a home gym, for having more rooms for online learning, I think all of this is going to start to impact what consumers value even more going forward. And I always put this, anytime I do this presentation, I have to share this slide because again, I'm pretty passionate about our industry. But we ask these respondents too, if you're back in the market again, what are you going to buy? Are you going to buy a custom home on your own lot? Are you going to build a new home? Are you going to buy a resale? Are you going to renovate or remodel? So what's pretty cool about this is the intent to buy a new home has actually increased by 6% since the first year of the study. It's now about almost 80% of these folks say that they're going to buy new again. And the reason I think that's interesting is these people we're surveying, they've been in their new home for up to 2 years at the time they take the survey. So it's no longer really a new home. It's now a mortgage payment. It might have lost a bit of that shine. And they're still saying the next time I'm back in market, 80% of them, or 79.1% are saying, next time I'm back in market, I'm buying new again. So a little shout out to our industry there. I think we do. It's a tough business, and I think that speaks volumes to the success we're having in keeping these home buyers coming back and happy about new home construction. So on that note too, they say they're going to buy new again, but when? When are they coming back to the market? So when will these home buyers be back in market for us to sell to again? Well, what we're seeing in the data is that the shorter term purchasers, they're showing actually a bit of a decrease since 2015. So those folks that are saying, I'm going to come back to market in 1 to 2 years, we're also seeing a little bit of a decrease in the group that's saying they're coming back in 3 to 5 years. The urgent ones, are not urgent, but the immediate, so within the next 12-month segment, that's remained pretty consistent. So it's 5.4% in 2015. We're sitting at 5.6% in the most recent study. But what we're seeing too is this unsure or the no plan segment. That's actually growing. It was closer to 30% in the first year of the study. So that uncertainty bucket or segment or shape of the pie, piece of the pie, is increased by almost 8% since the first year of the study. So it indicates that there is a bit more uncertainty or a longer term time horizon in general that's being considered when we're looking at buyer demand. And I like this. This is always an interesting slide to me as well. This is what I consider kind of a trade-off perspectives on these consumers. So, what would they be most willing to accept to make their next home more affordable? So we know affordability is an interesting topic. It's a challenging topic to stick handle through. But right now, the largest segment would accept a smaller home. So, and this segment's actually increased from 22.4% in the first year of the study. So it's been an increase of 3.1% since 2015. And that does bode well for, as I mentioned before, this kind of drive towards density or intensification that we work with as an industry. So it seems like consumers are recognizing that, and again, because of affordability, maybe I take a little less square footage if I can get into the market or move up the market. The unfinished spaces segments remain pretty consistent. That's the next big one there at 18.7%. It's remained pretty consistent since the start of the study. The next one I'm interested to keep an eye on too, further from work and amenities, that actually decreased from 2019, since the first year of the study, that's been on a bit of a decline or a decrease, shrinking section of the pie, meaning more people would actually prefer to work or live a little closer to work and amenities. And again, this is the one that I think will be super cool to see as future data flows in. This segment shrunk by 3.3% since the first year of the study, but we all work from home now. We can't go to the grocery. Well, we can go to the grocery store. We're not out as much. So it's going to be interesting to watch how this segment changes going forward when we look at, proximity to work and amenities. That might not be as important, depending on the trend changes that come out of this environment we're in. This whole work from home thing we're doing. I know a lot of companies I talk to are looking at, office optional, we'll say, arrangements. A lot of a lot of their employees are okay working from home, or okay working from home a lot of the time, part of the time. So it'd be interesting to see if that poses a significant shift when we look at, their preferences and their criteria when it comes to proximity. What do I want to live near, or does it matter anymore? And then, so that's the trade-off slide. Another interesting slide that I like to look at too is, I call it the found money slide or the wish list slide. But what would a consumer spend, or what would a new home buyer spend if they had an extra $10,000 to spend on their next home? Like, where would they put that money? So we can see, the largest piece of the pie is interior finishes and options. But what I did on this slide, instead of just looking at, you can see where the larger pieces are and smaller pieces. I took some time to go through and look at the gainers versus the decliners, though, to see how things changed over the past 5 years. This question we added in 2016, so we've got 5 years of data. This was added in the second year of the study. But the gainers that we're seeing is the sections of the pie that have increased. More folks would spend money on energy efficiency. The section on exterior finishes and options, that piece of the pie has gained some traction as well. The larger home actually did increase. So while they're willing on a different question to say they'll accept a smaller home to improve affordability, the wish list said if they had extra money, they'd still like a bigger home. So that's become slightly more important on the wish list over the years as well. And again, this location closer to work and amenities, I think that one's going to shift. But it was actually a bit of a gainer over the 5 years of the data. So we'll see where that one goes. Again, I'm just speculating when I say it's likely to shift, but I know my habits and patterns have changed. So I'm sure a lot of Canadians have as well. Now, some of the areas that have declined or shrunk, some of these sections of the pie, as I mentioned, interior finishes and options, it's the largest piece of the pie, but it has actually shrunk a little bit over the 5 years that we've had this question on the survey. The larger lot as well, that's actually shrunk a little bit. Again, that's what I'm keeping an eye on, though, because we'll talk about that in a bit here. And additional finished areas. So having additional finished areas has also been a segment that shrunk a little bit. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't put up the here's what's hot and here's what's not list from the recent study. I always wish this would dramatically change more. Every year when I look at the data, it's like, oh no, it's very similar to last year. But there's not really, when I looked at 2019 study to 2020 study, there's no changes in the top 10 list, just a shuffling of the pack, shuffling in the mix. So there are the three themes that we recurringly see in the study. The importance towards energy efficiency. There's an importance that we see in the data towards storage needs. And there's definitely an importance towards the kitchen, the most important room of the house. Now, I think the storage thing, those themes towards storage and creative storage solutions is only going to increase going forward. Features of the home like pantries, pantries I think finished number 12. I just narrowly missed the top 10 list. But I think things like pantries and storage solutions are going to continue to trend upwards as, again, more people have been dining in at home. Our cupboards are more full than before, things like that. And because we're at home more, we have more stuff we're going to put places. So storage, I think, is kind of a takeaway I've got from this. We're going to dig deeper into energy efficiency in a couple slides as well. The bottom 10 list, again, ebbs and flows from year to year. That's on the right side of the screen. So it stays pretty similar, but again, some shuffling in the pack there. So at this point, I thought it'd be interesting to get the audience, the group here, we're going to launch another little poll question, but just feedback from the group. I think we can do multiple select on this one. You can pick more than one answer here, I think. I might speak out of school if stuff.
No, that's right. You can have multiple choices. So you can select as many options as you want.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So just trying to find out, as people in the industry, what home features do you think will be increasing in demand the most from future home buyers due to COVID? So I know in our house, a home office would be nice to have. We didn't build it that way because we had a Brady bunch with 4 kids. So you got me at the dining room table today.
while people are answering that survey, I have one question that has come in that I would share with you, if that's okay, Tim.
Perfect.
Okay. So the question is part of the age buying new homes by stage reflecting that some groups, such as Gen Xers, are holding on to homes longer, perhaps for family creation, and not becoming a new home buyer as frequently as, say, other younger groups who may be doing more flipping of homes,
For sure.
for example?
I would think we don't dig deep enough, I think, or because it's a 190 question, we can't get to the motivator questions yet too. That would be exactly what I would speculate, that some of the younger generation is buying and flipping. I know I did that as myself when I was younger. Now I'm 12 years in a home, where before I was like you're 3 to 5 or less. So I think that's part of it too, is you get to that stage where like, okay, I've got what I need for now. It works. You're not moving up the continuum, and conversely, you're not coming down. So I would speculate that. But again, we ask the questions to get the high level data. We don't get deeper to the motivators on that one. So I wish I could do more than speculate, but I can't.
I can also just give kind of a personal observation as well. I filled out the survey a year and a half or so ago when I moved into my new home, and so I know what's happened over the last year or so is the price of homes have jumped up a lot, somewhat related to COVID, with lumber prices and that sort of thing. And so, what I paid for the home even a couple of years ago is quite different than what that home would be now, right? So there could be some possibility that people are afraid to sell because they'll have to pay more for perhaps less.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely challenging in most markets across Canada right now to go up the market. It's nice if you're coming down the market. I think it's interesting when you're going from a primary market to secondary and tertiary markets, because you can spin off some cash maybe, or get some more value, or get bigger sizing. But there's so many moving parts to that one. That's we don't know where to dig into the motivation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'll share the results that we have here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big group agrees with me. Man, I'd love to have a home office. Air quality solution. This is great. I'm glad we're recording this too. So, the air quality thing, I think as we're all spending more time at home, we're going to talk about that a little bit too. And home gyms, how do you get your exercise when the gyms keep closing?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Close this off my screen. Yeah, and see if I can. Ooh, it still came up. There we go. All right, so now I wanted to take some time and dive into kind of key areas of the study a little bit deeper. Again, we're still really only scratching the surface here, but I want to dig in the first room, most important room of the house, the kitchen. I dug into that one a little bit. The top three, just like the next few slides, kind of top three type things. Top three ranked kitchen features. First off is energy efficient appliances. And that was actually the highest ranked feature in the top 10 list overall of the study. And then kitchen island and open concept kitchen. And both of those also made the top 10 list overall. So, those are some important features that consumers are looking for. Quartz countertops ranked the highest as a countertop material. It's now a must-have feature to about 44% of new home buyers as of this past year's study. It was only at 29% back in the beginning, the first year of the study 6 years ago. Granite's ranked in second place, but has been trending downwards over the 6 years of the study, and laminate's actually ranked the lowest. But other studies, industry studies, are showing that we're probably going to see an increase in preferences towards anything that's easy to clean, which kind of makes sense. So quartz and solid surface countertops are likely to increase their trend upwards. We might also see an increase in demand or trends towards touch-free faucets, touch-free cabinetry, anything, I call it touchless tech, but those types of features in general. As a cabinet material, maple came in as the highest ranking cabinet material. And smart appliances, I actually have a slide on some smart home features, but smart appliances are now desirable to almost 60% of home buyers, 58.4%. So I'm going to say that's likely to continue to gain importance as we all embrace more smart home tech in general. So I'm going to guess that that's going to keep trending upwards. But a surprising stat to me was that almost 60% say they want smart home appliances. It's a desirable feature. Now, the second most important room of the house, so it depends on your lifestyle, I guess, but is the primary suite. So, as part of some broader language changes that we're seeing in the industry, we did update the terminology this year from master suite to primary suite. I still get messed up at times. It's just old habits die hard, I guess. But the master suite from previous studies is now deemed the primary suite. And what we're looking at here, the top 3 ranked features for the primary suite. Number 1 is walk-in closets. That was also in the top 10 list overall again this year. Double sinks. And I dug a little deeper to see who they're most important to. And double sinks are actually most important to the millennials. So that's how you can go into the data even deeper. So they're actually most important to the millennial cohort when you look at the data by age group. You can also look at it by product type or buyer type, things like that. And third most important is an oversized shower. The main floor primary suite continues to increase in importance. And I think that's my speculation there, or my interpretation there, is that's likely tied to this increase in activity that we're seeing in the semi-retired and the retired segment of the market. As main floor primary suite ranks highest with the boomers and the pre-boomers in our data. And then I've noted this in other presentations over the years, but the secondary or the second primary suite, it's marginal in importance. It's not for everybody, but it's actually showing as a desirable feature to over a third. 35.2% of home buyers want that feature. They find it desirable. So again, motivators for that, that's the next layer. Would be nice to know why. That's what we're seeing in the data. It's the why would be another layer deep that we can't get without making the survey monstrous, even more monstrous. But again, we have multi-generational living in Canada. We have people looking for maybe a boarder that they can collect a few bucks from to make to offset their mortgage payments, things like that. Lots of reasons where that might be the motivator for the secondary or second primary suite. But regardless, we're seeing it's desirable to over a third of new home buyers right now. Tubs continue to show a steady decline since we launched the survey 6 years ago. I'm wondering, this is one I'm keeping an eye on personally just to see, because I'm wondering if we might see a reversing trend on tubs as, again, we're spending more time at home. People might want to regain some sort of a escapism, a spa-like lifestyle, things like that, light a candle, soak in a bath. I don't know if there'll be a resurgence for tubs going forward, but it'd be interesting one I'm keeping an eye on. And then in general, I think we're probably going to see an increasing trend for this concept of rooms within rooms. So due to the changing lifestyles that we're having to, work around right now, things like a sitting or a reading nook in the primary suite, or a creative office space even in the primary suite, might become more important. A couple weeks back, I was talking to one of our multifamily builder clients in Vancouver, and they were saying, hey, we've actually added a work nook, or a little office area, to all of their plans. I was like, wow, how do you fit that in some of these multifamily condo plans? But they said, well, there's just so much need for it right now. So they're actually putting a work nook or a little office area in their vertical product in their multifamily plans. Now looking at some of the interior features of the home, the top 3 ranked interior features, walk-in closets was number 1 for the interior features section. It actually was number 2 overall across all survey questions. And then large windows and linen closets. Both of those also made the top 10 list overall. Formal dining room has been trending upwards. We've seen that the past couple of years. Formal living rooms have also been trending upwards. When I first saw that, it surprised me. Now because of the pandemic, it's almost making more sense now. So, these formal rooms that's something where I'm keeping an eye on. Wondering if we're going to start to see sort of a trend to the end of some of the open concept design era that we're in. I joked I did a webinar for CHBA last fall with some of this data. Like, HGTV has been demoing interior walls since the early 1990s, as long as I've been watching some of the shows. And there's lots of pros to open concept, but this COVID world has definitely exposed a lot of the negatives of this type of design too. You have less privacy, poor sound control, maybe cluttered appearance. All these items get magnified the more we're in our homes. So I expect we'll start to see increasing trends towards at least more physical separation. I know one of our sales reps that lives in Chicago, she's like, oh my God, I'm putting pocket doors on every archway right now, and swinging French doors on every archway just to keep my family noise apart. And again, we're dining in more, so we might not want to see the clutter of a kitchen all the time if we can get away from it and eat in a formal dining room. Spending more time at home means we might just want to have a change of scenery. So I'm wondering if things like, again, anything that gives that sense of space change, arches, pocket doors, changing ceiling heights. So it feels like we're moving around to different spaces, even though we're still kind of captive at home. Home office, again, we saw that in the polling question, super important. feature that we expect is going to keep trending upwards, but it was already important to almost 2/3 of home buyers. It's been trending steadily upwards over the past 6 years of the study. It's always a mid-pack feature though, but I do expect we're going to see that one, just like the poll said, is being impacted dramatically right now with all this work from home we're doing. And then special purpose rooms, they've always again been sort of marginal, ranking low towards the bottom of the pack in this study over the years. But again, I think this is an area we're keeping an eye on as well. Things like learning rooms or home offices or home theaters or music rooms, things like that we might want, or even combo rooms can do any of those things, might become more important and of more value to home buyers going forward. And I mentioned smart home tech. We saw smart appliances on a previous slide being important in the kitchen. Smart home tech in general, we added survey questions about smart home tech in 2018. So it's been on the study for a couple of years. The top 3 items for the 2020 that we see, the top 3 most important were Wi-Fi thermostats, lighting automation, and security systems. And I dug a little deeper too. And Wi-Fi thermostats actually rank higher than double sinks in the primary suite. So I always like goofing around in the system to see what's more important when you get more granular. So Wi-Fi thermostats, pretty important feature. But Canadian consumers in general are embracing smart assistants, whether it's Google Home or Amazon Echo's products, things like that, have Alexa in your house. They're embracing smart appliances, lighting control systems, security systems, cameras. The revenue, I pulled up some stats, but the revenue in the smart home tech market in Canada was estimated to finish last year, 2020, at $2.3 billion. And it's expected to reach about $4.8 billion by 2025. And then I thought, well, I wonder who's buying it, like household. So then I dug a little deeper on that one too from other studies. Household penetration of smart home tech in Canada was estimated to be about 24% for last year, projected to be about nearly 50% at 47% by 2025. So definitely a hot button area. And it's a confusing area, I think, for the industry too. What's most important when you get into smart home tech? And will consumers pay extra for it? Is it just an expectation? So, but it's cool to be collecting some of the data on the smart home tech side of the business right now too. And then we wanted to dig into some of the exterior features, outdoor lifestyle. The top 3 ranked exterior features that we're seeing, number 1 is a 2-car garage. Now that has been trending downwards since 2015. But it's still a must-have feature to almost 60% of the respondents. So it was about 58.4% said this is a must-have feature. When you look at parking configurations, no garage or open parking was still the lowest ranking feature in the study when it came to that. But a little pandemic side note here, we came across a recent survey from autotrader.ca. And what they noticed is that first-time car buyers in Canada are 3 times more likely than experienced buyers to state that they're purchasing a vehicle because of the pandemic. So, it's likely due to decreased use of car sharing apps, Uber and Lyft, decreased use of car sharing services, possibly, decreased use of public transit. But what is interesting about this is 2 things that jumped out at me right away is, one, will this impact needs for more parking, more garage space when people now choose to have vehicles? Will it affect where they want to live? They can now, if they were living in a core and using public transit, now have a vehicle, maybe they will move out, like we're hearing, more out to suburbia or secondary and tertiary markets. But on the other side of that, again, will this also then impact their ability to save for down payment? Operating vehicles is not a inexpensive venture. So car payments, car debts, operating costs, is that going to then impact their ability to afford to save up for down payments or save up for that next house as they're moving up the market, things like that. So stuff to, a little side note, but lest I digress, sorry. The next most important feature we saw in the exterior was stone exterior, immediately followed by brick. And so consumers really like their masonry looking exteriors, at least. And again, because this is Canada-wide data here, but there's so many cultured stone and veneer products and things like that available now. It used to be Ontario was brick country, and you get out west and it was more siding, but that's shaken up with all the different great products on the market now. Now, outdoor lifestyle is an interesting outdoor living features. This one's been kind of interesting as well. Privacy fence is number 1. And we've seen that trending upwards over the 6 years of the study. And again, some of the things I'm wondering about on that too, just a food for thought is, will this further increase because it provides a sense of security? I want my kids to play on our fenced in home yard versus unsupervised public parks and spaces. Some public parks were closed, or the water park in our splash pad in our area was shut down for due to COVID, things like that. So having that big safe sense of security fenced yard, I think that could become more valued by consumers. And then some of these other things like an outdoor living area. I know what we did last summer. We created an outdoor, whole outdoor living patio area just because we wanted to change the scenery. We couldn't vacation, you couldn't go anywhere, but you can staycation at home, and that feeds right into this idea of a covered patio or deck as well. So there's definitely more and more emphasis, in design trends in general about connection to the outdoors. Bringing the outside in, taking the inside out, that type of lifestyle. Large windows we always see in the top 10 list, which is that connection to the outside. But I think we'll also start to see more demand for outdoor living spaces, outdoor rooms versus a single yard, having sectioning up the yard like we section up our houses, like for interest areas. We've become more accustomed to a staycation lifestyle, so we're homesteading a bit more. Other trend changes I'm keeping an eye on is lot size preference. Micro gardening or micro farming and gardening took off last year. You're at home, let's plant a garden. There's this whole sort of vibe towards nature again. That's become more popular. Demand for pools and hot tubs. I was talking to people who wanted to put a pool in, they're on a 2-year wait list. So, that's increased. And what that means is, those lifestyles take more lot space. So it'll be interesting to see if lot size preferences start to change too going forward. Now, I mentioned earlier in this study that we asked respondents questions about the community amenities and proximity preferences. What do they want their communities to look like? Where do they call home? What do they want to live near? Last summer, I think bicycles became the new toilet paper. You could not get a bicycle. A relative of mine owns a bicycle shop, and he was sold out and busy, hiring. But again, people weren't maybe using public transit as much, so take a bike instead of jumping on public transit or taking an Uber. It was also a huge exercise alternative. Gyms aren't open, rec centers aren't open, so at least I can jump on a bike and go bike some trails. It seems now that this winter, according to Sport Check, cross-country skis and snowshoes are the new toilet paper. So if I say motivators there, you want to get some exercise. So cross-country skis, snowshoes are hard to come by. But then we get into proximity preferences. I think this is one that's definitely going to get shaken up here. Study data already showed that a considerable portion, a big chunk of home buyers, a pretty good segment, were willing to move further away from work and amenities. We saw some said they wanted to stay closer, but there was a big portion that said they would move further from work and amenities to make their next home more affordable. I think that's got a big potential to change as well. Work from home proximity, where's my office now? It's in my dining room today, or it's in your home or your basement. So I think that's going to get shaken up. Proximity to schools as well. Like I know now Ontario schools are learn from home right now, but I know people were choosing to drive their kids to school versus public busing them. So distance to schools might be less important. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. Shopping. Shopping is getting disrupted tremendously. So Canadian retail sales fell like 18% between February and May last year, while online sales double. I mean, they surged ahead by like almost 100%, 99.3%. So over that same time period. So the disruption to proximity to shopping, so many more consumers are buying online. And I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into some of the energy areas as well, the efficiency and sustainability areas. This is a high level slide. I got a couple more slides on this as well. But when we look at just the top 3 ranked features, number 1 was energy efficient appliances. And this was number 1, as I mentioned before, in the overall study. Next after that was an overall energy efficient home. And then following was high efficiency windows. And both of those also ranked in the top 10. They were respectively number 3 and number 4 in the overall study, 190 questions. So important stuff to today's home buyers. Certification by an independent third party or a third party rating system, such as Energy Star or Energuide or Net Zero, whatever it might be, Built Green out west or LEED. That's actually, I call it an honorable mention for 2020. It was in spot 11. And it's been in the top 10 list before, but it just missed the top 10 list. It finished in number 11. But it is a must-have or a really want feature. So, it's super important to 80.7% of today's home buyers. So almost 81% of today's home buyers are looking for that sort of independent third-party verification of some sort. LED lighting has been trending upwards since we launched the study 6 years ago. Solar electric's also been trending upwards over the 6 years. We saw solar thermal trended down a little bit from 2019 to 2020, but solar PV has been on an upwards trend. And then the HRV, ERV is also placing in this top 10 list overall. So side note on this too, I think we're likely to see increased awareness, increased demand for all things indoor air quality related, like indoor air quality technology. Again, more people at home now, lots more, they heard lots of things last year, media discussing whether, COVID was airborne or droplet spread, but regardless, there's this awareness of indoor air quality. Again, we're spending so much more time at home. I think also that we're likely to see increased awareness of energy efficiency. Now, I'm in my home a lot more than I ever was before. My lights are on more, I'm in and out more, things like that. Spending more time at home, you're going to notice efficiency for one, but you're also going to notice comfort. You're going to notice livability. So some hot buttons there that I think are going to be interesting to watch as well. So we do ask a couple questions, tying spend, what would a consumer invest for energy efficient features in their next home? So we asked this question in two different ways on the survey. But the first question is basically, how much would you spend upfront? How much extra upfront if you could save $1,200 per year on your utility costs? So how much more would you spend on your next home? What we're seeing in the data is 55% of home buyers are willing to spend up to $5,000 extra on energy efficient features on their next home if it could save them about $100 a month, $1,200 per year on utility costs. Now the inset pie graph to the right is just a slightly different wording to try and tap into the same sentiment from these consumers. We asked, how much extra would you add to your monthly mortgage payment if it would save you on your utility costs there? What we're seeing in the data is about 54% of home buyers indicate that they would spend $100 or more extra on their monthly mortgage payment if it could save them $100 per month on utilities. Of that, if you sub-segment that group, 30% are looking for a break even though. They'd spend $100 more on their monthly mortgage payment if it saved them $100 a month on the utility costs. But what was interesting is that about 24% indicate they would actually invest beyond that expected return. So they'd invest more than $100 a month, even if they couldn't get that 100 back on utility costs. So they're probably, again, estimating down the road, utility costs might not come down. They might continue to go up in life. But interesting, a quarter would actually, they're not looking for that ROI. They'd invest slightly more than the proposed ROI that we put into the question there. But as the group at Building Knowledge Canada knows for sure, and Sue, investment in energy efficiency is more than just dollars and cents, right? And again, I've been in the industry a long time, and I've built Energy Star homes before, and we did a few other projects and discovery homes. But what I see from a lot of our builder clients that have had the best success for selling higher performing homes is they've changed the conversation, and they've changed it to more the livability benefits. So it's more comfortable. Home's not as drafty. You don't put a sweater on to sit beside that winter on a winter's day. But improved indoor air quality. I'd rather control it myself. I'd rather seal it great and ventilate. There's lots of little catchphrases out there: seal it tight, ventilate right. All the things I heard when I was building, but it's the way to control and then improve indoor air quality. So marketability focusing on livability with utility cost savings as a bonus seems to be a pretty successful recipe when talking to today's home buyers. And we're starting to see that transpire in the data as well. So, while lower utility costs is still a big segment of the responses we're seeing on the left-hand graph there, protection of the environment actually increased by 6.5%. And that piece of the pie has grown by 6.5% since 2016 when we added this question. But again, every summer we hear about these forest fires. There's more intense hurricane seasons every August, September, October, more flooding. It really does continue to reinforce the environmental issues with consumers. Again, improved indoor air quality, that's increased as well as a section of the pie. As I mentioned, again, work from home, school from home, dining from home, everything from home is likely to keep impacting that awareness of what's the indoor air quality of my home like with consumers. And then when I go back to market to buy my next home, can I improve on that? So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. We've got a few minutes left. I got quite a few minutes left. So I've got some slides I thought it'd be interesting. So this has been talking a lot about consumer preferences. What do they want? But I wanted to actually jump into we have another whole database, which is on customer experience, customer satisfaction. So I wanted to pop in a few slides to take a look at, okay, this is what they all want. How are we doing as an industry with some of this stuff? So the next section of the presentation, I just want to focus in on some of our customer experience database findings. So what I did is I dug into our CX, our customer satisfaction database, looking at new home buyer customer satisfaction feedback that we get across Canada. It's for move-in survey data. So surveys that go out 30 days after somebody takes possession of their new home. I wanted to keep it pretty current. So I'm looking at folks that closed the new home between October of 2019 and September of last year. So pretty recent swath of data there. And then what I also pulled up is we also send out year-end surveys once they're celebrating their 1-year anniversary in their home. So I pulled up a similar data set for folks that were celebrating their anniversary in their home, 1-year anniversary, for that similar date range of October 19 to September 20. Now, since we're just talking about energy efficiency, I thought I'd start there. So we're looking at energy efficiency preferences. I thought, let's jump in and take a look at customer satisfaction in this area of energy efficiency. So what I have on screen right now is actually the homebuyer feedback results we asked on the surveys, the move-in surveys about, how do you feel about the overall energy efficiency of your new home? This is Ontario data. And again, it's from our move-in survey, 30 days post-occupancy. The gray line on top is what we call our high-level benchmark. It's the top 10% of builders in North America, so kind of the top performers. The orange line we see on screen, the solid line is the month-to-month trend in Ontario, and the dotted orange line is kind of the average trend through that. Is it tipping north or south? We plot an average through that. So what you're seeing on screen here is, or the observations I pulled from this data is that, new home buyer satisfaction for overall energy efficiency in Ontario is actually it's pretty reasonable. It averages out at 85.8 on a 100-point scale for this closing date range. So we're kind of an A student, and that's that orange line on the graph. I also then dug a little deeper, and so the inset graph is showing. We ask, are you delighted about it, or are you very dissatisfied? That 6-point scale that you're seeing on the right side. And nearly 50% of these new home buyers are actually in the top bar in that delighted category. So for their overall energy efficiency perception in their new home, 50% said, yeah, I'm delighted. Now, having said that, there is lots of room to make gains here. So if you look at that gray line of best-in-class builders, the top 10% are averaging 95.1 over that same period. So Ontario is hitting at 85. What did I say there? About an 85, 86, and top 10% are almost 10 points higher, sitting at a 95. So then I also wanted to pull the same information once these consumers have been in their home for a year. So I went into our year-end survey database for this overall energy efficiency question for home buyers. They're having their 1-year anniversary in their home between October 19 and September 20. Basically then means they closed the home the previous year, October 18 to September 19. And the observations we're seeing here is that new home buyer satisfaction for overall energy efficiency in Ontario by year end, it drops now down to about 79.3. So it's about a 6.5-point drop from move-in. And that's, again, this orange, the orange line on the graph. And the inset graph is showing that, now we're seeing 34% are saying they're in that delighted bar, down from like 50 before. The best in class, the gray line, it looks like it's having some weird heart attack. The gray line on the graph was pretty erratic over the course of that time frame. And if I plotted a dotted gray line through that, it's actually, our top 10% benchmark has actually been trending downwards, which is, opposite. Ontario has actually been trending upwards slightly, which is great to see. But the top 10% in North America score an average of 87.4 at year end versus 95.1 at move-in. So they dropped about 7, almost 8 points from move-in to year end. It's actually a bigger drop than what we see in Ontario. So Ontario benchmark was dropping, it was performing better from move-in to year end on overall energy efficiency than what we're seeing in our top 10% data set. But sometimes what we see too in the top 10% data set, when you start higher, you often have further to fall too. You set the bar pretty high. So at this point, before I get into the last few slides, I wanted to launch our last poll of the day. But I wanted to ask, how much do you think customer satisfaction declines with new home buyers from move-in to year-end? Does it stay the same? Does it drop off a couple, 1 to 2%? Does it, drop off 3 to 5 points? Is it dropping off 6 to 10? Is it pretty dramatically dropping off more than 10%? So just wanted to get the audience perception. I already know kind of the answer to this one because we have some data on it, but it'd be interesting to see where we finish with these poll results. Give it a couple seconds. Again, I will let Stephanie control the poll screen.
We're in a few more respondents here.
Perfect. Stephanie's pulling all the levers behind the curtain for us today.
That's right. This has been so interesting, Tim.
Well, and thanks everybody for jumping on the polls. And I like breaking it up a little bit because it's a lot of data to intake. So Stephanie just shared the polls. Pretty intuitive crowd we have here today. More than 10%. We've got 19% of the folks that have responded say more than 10%. A lot of them in kind of 3 to 10, kind of almost an even split. It is an even split there. So super interesting. Well, I can show you next what we're seeing in our data at least. So I'm just going to close the poll there, get back to my other screen. So this is what we're actually seeing in our database when it comes to customer experience from move-in to year-end. It's always, to me, a bit of a concerning trend we see in the industry, how customer satisfaction does drop off. It points to a little bit of a symptomatic problem in our industry between move-in and year-end, but a really common loyalty indicator in customer experience, or in our world that I work in, is the survey question of how likely are you to recommend this company to a friend or a family member, or different variations of that wording. It's called the Net Promoter Score or Net Promoter wording. But the graph above here, graph on screen, is actually plotting the would recommend score at move-in and year-end. The orange line is for the top 10% of builders in North America, and the blue line below that is kind of, I call it the pack, but it's our North America all database. The observations here is, even best-in-class builders decline in customer experience, customer loyalty from move-in to year-end. But the blue line shows the decline in the would recommend score from move-in to year-end based on our pack, our North America all data set, drops almost 9 points, where the top 10% in North America drop off about 7 points. So almost 2 points less than the pack. But again, both data sets show the customer loyalty does decline from move-in to year-end. I'd say the new car smell is gone. But the top 10% position themselves higher. The winning formula is they start higher and fall less. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper in that in the last couple of slides here to show you what's going on, or what we're seeing here. They say work is theater, right? And every business is a stage. So here's how the best in class are separating themselves from the pack with some of these recurring customer satisfaction pain points that we see in our industry. The first 2 bars are actually a category total. So the overall closing process walkthrough is a category total of the bars beside. So what we're seeing is, the top 10% are finishing almost 7 points higher when it comes to this overall pre-closing walkthrough process. And that is made up of these other bars. So you get there by winning in these other bars. So having a clean and ready home, the top 10% are scoring about 8.5 points better. For having items corrected before move-in, top 10% are scoring about 9.5 points higher. For the perception of items that need correction or that are listed for correction at the walkthrough, pre-closing walkthrough, top 10% are about 8 points higher there as well. And then this perception of time to get these things remedied, corrected, fixed, finished. Top 10% are scoring about 8 points higher on that one as well. So what we're seeing in the data is, best-in-class builders are really creating that early advantage for long-term loyalty. They're really, setting the stage for success. or taking pole position if you're a NASCAR lover, to build customer loyalty. So they're turning over homes that are promoter worthy, I call them, more frequently and consistently than the pack. Or another way to look at it, I guess, is that their people, their products, and their processes are all aligned or focused on fire prevention versus firefighting. Now, continuing, I guess, with that work as theater analogy, best-in-class builders are also working hard for that curtain call, at year end or beyond, trying to get that standing ovation when it comes to customer loyalty after move-in. And post-closing is a tough stage. I've been in the business. We don't have access to the home anymore. Homeowners have different degrees of ethics of care, I call it, but what's warrantable, what the heck is lack of care from the homeowners? It blurs everything. And again, on top of it, now the home's a year old or more, and the new is worn off. It's now a mortgage payment. It's lost the new home smell, whatever it might be. But the sunshine pump is gone. It's no longer able to keeping them pumped up and feeling positive. What best in class, what I'm seeing in the data though, is that the top 10% have a significant lead over the pack with the warranty service experience as well. They're coming in over 8 points higher when it comes to starting in a timely manner. They're coming over 9 points higher when it comes to finishing warranty work in a timely manner, over 9 points higher when it comes to providing quality repairs, 8.5 points higher with quality service, 9 points higher, pretty big margins here. For providing positive overall warranty experience, and almost 8.5 points again when it comes to providing updates, communication on warranty requests. So, I think every builder is hoping for applause from their audience at the end of the show. Those applause today come in the form of, for sure, referrals, definitely positive online reviews, which are so important, social mentions, brand advocacy, hopefully down the road, repeat purchasers in the future, and more. So I will kind of sum up here, just one slide. I won't read through it all, but COVID is definitely, this is shaking up consumer habits and preferences. Definitely, it's going to likely lead to more reno spending to accommodate new demands on existing homes. It's going to be probably a more rooms, less open concept when it comes to design trends, more special purpose rooms, home offices we talked about, more emphasis on livability. I think though too, that's going to be put under the microscope of homeowners when it comes to comfort and air quality and efficiencies. Again, homes, we've said several times, they've been our remote offices, our micro farms, our remote learning centers, our restaurants. They become our all. So it'll be interesting to see as this goes as we head forward, start getting ready to launch the next year of this study. So many other design trends we could talk about, but again, that's all. There could be a whole other webinar on that. I think, thankfully, we have low mortgage rates right now in the short term. That's good for our industry. There is going to be some headwinds, I feel, but I'm not an economist. But I think immigration flow, supply chain issues, material costs, labor force shortages, like lots of other stuff that we'll have to stick handle through as an industry. But again, that's a topic for a whole other webinar. So if anyone's interested, that's on the line here, that's on the webinar, as the study is available through CHBA. We do the data, we're the data nerds behind the scenes, but CHBA offers the study on their website. You can, and actually if you're a CHBA member, they provide it for free. It was new last year. So there is a link there on screen if anyone's interested. You get the 200+ page PDF report, and then you can also drill deeper with the online tool that's provided with the data. So you can drill, as I mentioned, like into geos, into demographic cohorts, into income levels, things like that, to really make the data live for your market and your product. So I will wrap up with that. I will turn the presentation back over to Building Knowledge Canada and Stephanie here. And a quick thank you for everyone for paying attention. A lot of data to absorb, and I always appreciate everyone staying engaged.
Thank you so much, Tim. That was really, really interesting. I know we have a couple of minutes, so perhaps we could just touch on a couple of things that we talked about and before we completely wrap up. So I know I was just making all sorts of notes in the background, just hearing what you had to say. And so some of the things that were kind of bouncing around in my head, that warranty that you were talking about, I know, like, having run a renovation business for many years, I found that it was after the job was done was my best selling tool and the least expensive, because that's when, people are wanting to have pre-COVID, family over and friends over to show off their new home, right? And so if our warranty was not up to par during the time that they're excited about sharing their new home, they would probably share their negative experience with their friends too, right? So I found that the warranty department for builders and for my business too is kind of your least expensive, most valuable selling tool.
As they say that they're not really warranty service people; they're sales reps.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. It certainly helps with word of mouth for sure. But yeah, and I was thinking, you were talking about the privacy fence. The other thing that I've been reading and seeing is a lot of people are getting COVID pets. And so I wonder if the privacy fence, there's a connection or correlation with COVID pets as well, possibly.
Well, that makes total sense. I forget. That's right too. I've read that as well. It's like everyone's, we're all homebound. It's pretty easy to take care of a pet when I'm not leaving the country.
Yeah, exactly. And also too, I saw where you're talking about how there's an uptick in investors, and I'm hearing that as well, just in speaking with builders throughout in Ontario in my particular case, but I think probably across the country as well. I know there had been some mortgage rule changes that had occurred a few years ago that had made it really difficult for first-time buyers to move into buying that first home. And what builders were telling me, at least in Ontario, is a lot of their product was now being built. A lot of towns and in those types of multi-unit products that were basically built for investors to rent to the people that would have normally been first-time home buyers. So I'm not surprised to see that data. Yeah. That's very interesting. A couple of other points that that were just raised. Multi-generational homes are starting to see an uptick. Second, primary suites. I think you'd mentioned that one, but this person referred to it as a snore room. So
I didn't want to say it. I thought the same thing when I see the data. It's like, my previous life was adult lifestyle community we were building, and a lot of the plans, the husband and wife had separate primary suites.
Yeah, it's very, very common. Yeah, exactly. And semi-retired, here's an interesting one on the garage comment, semi-retired and retired segment. Sometimes they're getting rid of that second car. So they're downsizing to a single car. So I thought that was kind of an interesting point. And another one was, he's mentioning in his experience, if third-party ratings are not explained by the developer or salesperson in value terms, they'll be less desirable by consumers than, say, a $5,000 free upgrade, for example. And so the $5,000 in free upgrades may be perceived as more desirable, even though the first one, the third-party rating, actually carries more value to it.
More value, totally.
Yes.
It's all about how you position the value statements, right?
Right, and it goes to how we communicate with these sorts of things. So a lot of really good feedback and comments on that.
Oh, that's awesome. That is great.
Yeah. Okay, so once again, thank you so much, Tim. This is incredibly informative, so I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And of course, to Enbridge, the team at Enbridge for their support, and for Susan, who spoke earlier today. So our next presentation is on March 11th, and it is with Building Knowledge's own Gord Cook and Andy Oetting, and we're going to be looking at net zero carbon, net zero energy, net zero cost. So we will take an hour and a half dive on that and look for that. Also, Building Knowledge is launching our very exciting Builder 360 Unplugged webinar series. And this is with builders and renovators telling their stories, boots on the ground. So it's from builders for builders, basically. And so we're really looking forward to that. So look for more information coming on that. When I close the webinar today, you will see a little window that pops up with a SurveyMonkey link in it. Please feel free to complete that SurveyMonkey. We would really appreciate your feedback. And because we always want to continue to improve and fine tune on our webinars. And lastly, once the recording link is available, it takes a few hours for Zoom to do its magic behind the scenes. But once the recording link is available, I will be sending an email out to everyone that registered for today's webinar, and it will include the link to the recording, as well as Tim's PowerPoint presentation, the PDFs, and also a link to the SurveyMonkey in case you missed it, as well as the link to our upcoming webinar series. So, and webinar sessions that are coming up. So once again, thank you, Tim, and I appreciate it. And thank you to Enbridge, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much.